You're listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast, hosted by Zach Bechtold and Matt Franks. If you'd like to learn more about the Bearded Theologians, you can go online at beardedtheologians.com, where we have past podcasts, blogs, and a couple items for sale. So check us out, beardedtheologians.com. Thank you for listening, and enjoy this week's show. You're listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast, hosted by Matt Franks
and Zach Bechtold. And today we have the most wonderful Reverend David Petty, colleague of mine here in the Mountain Sky. He's in Meeker, Colorado, and does a thing called Crossfire Faith in Gaming. And David, and great, thanks for being on. Glad to have you.
Thank you guys for having me.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and what you do.
Sure. So I'm David Petty. I serve the church here in Meeker. It's the beginning of my fourth year here. It's my first appointment. I'm originally from Southern California. Grew up, born and raised there. Came out to Colorado to go to Iliff School of Theology. And then while I was there, they sent me out to Meeker for my first appointment. And I got kind of deep started right there in my second year in seminary and full-time ministry. So, but while I was in that, I kind of had this nagging that, I was missing something that I had formerly in life. And, part of that was like the self-care piece that I, wasn't doing the things that I had enjoyed when I was growing up. And I had kind of lost touch with everything except for work. And so I started to try and regain a piece of what was that? It was some recreation, it was some fun, it was some play, and really kind of honed in on this idea of play. And that one of the things I did growing up, that probably a lot of us did growing up, still do, right, is to play some games. And I started playing games, and I got connected with some other folks that were playing games, and I got connected in with the kind of the gaming, the group of people who play games on a regular basis. And I recognized it was kind of all around at the same point that we were hearing about shootings happening and hearing about men with mental health problems, and especially men who are feeling disconnected, but thinking about gamers as a segment of society that probably generally is disconnected from an in-person connection, like people going to church on Sundays. That gamers are a little bit more on their own, a little bit more isolated, a little bit more in their own worlds, but wondering, how do I reach out to a group of people who are in their own worlds, who are playing games, and do that with God's love? So I was like, is there this possibility of a church for gamers? And what does that look like? And so I told a couple people, and a couple people said, well, that's a weird idea, and that's like the worst idea ever. And I told a couple other people, and they said, that's amazing. Why don't you run with it? So about 2 years ago, I want to say it was, finally got started, created a Facebook group, originally with the intent of just kind of asking the question of what could a group like this look like? And before long, the group about the group became the group. So to date, we've got 86 members in the group. It's on Facebook mostly, called Crossfire Faith in Gaming. We meet weekly on a Discord chat with anywhere from 3 to 10 of us, and just kind of hang out and connect over the fact that we have a common shared interest in gaming, and a common shared interest in exploring our faith together. So it's pretty neat.
That is really neat. I remember you approaching me with the idea in the Iliff hallway a couple of years ago of, you're like, hey, I've got this idea, you've got this podcast, how do these things work together? And, what are you seeing in the digital community? And, that's something we're passionate about here, is creating that space where people can gather. And the other thing we're passionate about is games. That's how Matt and I built our relationship, was playing. After we went to the Philippines together for Global Convocation, we came back and started playing, and really, there's something there. And so when you mentioned it to me, I was like, man, that's it. There's a community here, because I've seen it. It's how I've built a significant relationship in my life. And so I've been excited and fascinated to watch you build this on Facebook, and how quickly and how active it is, with people actually having conversation. You almost post daily, a daily question, or every couple of days you'll post a question. What game are you playing now? Or, what was the first game you remember playing? And there's a significant amount of feedback and conversation that's happening simply around games.
Yeah, I think
And it's great.
I think it's been neat to see, kind of a mix of nostalgia and interest group and news, so we post about what's going on. But then, the fact that we share this common interest in games and we can come together and at the same time have a place where we can connect over faith and over, kind of a communal place to experience life as it's happening. So every now and then somebody's got something major that's going on in life and they'll post, hey, by the way, my wife's going in for surgery, or hey, by the way, my son is sick. And we've actually had a couple of like prayer group times on the Discord chat where we're like, hey, we're gonna end our Discord chat in prayer, and we're gonna be in prayer for one another. So it's been really neat to see kind of this interesting mix and this blend. But more, the coolest thing for me is that it's really brought together a group of people I think that don't generally find their primary source of community in in-person connections. And so that's been a neat thing to explore and kind of pioneer what this looks like in a digital space.
For sure. Gosh. So what are you seeing in regards of that as community you're coming together when you guys meet on Discord? When you're having prayer time together, what are you seeing in the terms of self-care there? Is doing this and being intentional about gathering in this community, breaking down some of those barriers to say, no, this is self-care for me, and not just playing video games and trying to relive my childhood or stay in that space?
Yeah, so I don't know if this really gets to the essence of your question, but it's something I've been exploring as we look at like the lectionary this week with the Mary and Martha story, and like what does it mean to be distracted? Because video games can be a distraction, and so how do you draw that boundary between the adolescent who's playing video games for 12 hours a day and ignoring their homework, or the adult who's playing video games for 12 hours a day and ignoring their family? And the adult or the adolescent who's sensibly saying, no, this is some playtime, this is self-care time, and it's an hour or two here or there. And how do we start to talk about that differently? For some reason, societally, it's okay to binge watch Netflix, it's okay to sit down with a book for 3 hours, it's okay to play basketball with your buddies for 2 hours, but to play video games, we still have this stigma around it. So trying to break down that stigma and say, for some people, this is really self-care. And the other thing I'm fascinated with is the world building and the storytelling that comes about from video games. I got really deep and interested in this. I've actually got it here. Let me I can hold it up on the screen. This book called Reality is Broken by Jane McGonigal. And in it, she describes the idea that, the reason we play video games is because they're very easy rules and very easy to understand worlds, where the real world is complex and sometimes does not have easy to understand or rules that are filled with justice and compassion. And so we build these worlds like World of Warcraft or Destiny or whatever it is that we're playing, and we say this is a much easier to understand world than the one I'm living in. She also goes into description about playing card games and playing board games, and we've been playing games for centuries. This is not a new concept, and yet for some reason video games have a different stigma around them. She talks about the let's see here. Where is it? She talks about the group of people, I forget who exactly it was. It was the Lydians, who essentially had a famine in their land for years. And what they did was they invented different games to pass the time. And what they would do was they would eat every other day, and they would play games on the off days. And so the distraction was actually a way to survive getting through the hard times by saying, we're not going to focus on the problem we don't have a solution to. We're going to do some self-care in the middle so we can get through to the next day. And I think you're also seeing some of that. In the world, there are difficult times, and there's stuff that people engage with, and there's stuff that people say, look, I've been engaging and I just need a break. And so gaming is a way to take a break and connect with people on a social level rather than connecting with people fighting in a Facebook argument or, trying to convince your in-laws that their opinions are incorrect.
Well, what was interesting in this past week, this week in July, the middle of July, like so 15 through, I think they just finished this yesterday. NPR, their program 1A, looked at video gaming and talked about different aspects of video gaming, from the aspects of the some of the issues that they have within gaming regarding, people of color and of race and of different sexual orientations. And I actually had to change my gamer tag because after a certain person who was elected president was elected, the hate little messages I was getting as Rabbi Franks was such that I just got tired of it and so I had to change my name. And so I elevated myself to Cardinal just because, not really. But what I find interesting in the sense of video gaming, and as someone who does play almost on a nightly basis, is that there is that sense of community, but there's also that sense of reaching out to the outsider who probably wouldn't have a connection to a religious community otherwise. Maybe they're antisocial in the real world, but in the sense of playing video games, they'll talk your ear off. Or I know Zach and we've been playing video games together for 5 years, and we've been playing with these group of people for that amount of time. And what's been amazing is how they've invited us into their lives and see us as their pastor. Even though that's not something, we're probably just as ruthless as they are on the games. And so, what have you found probably the most enlightening for you as you've made this journey doing what you're doing?
Gosh, the most enlightening. That's a pretty big question. I think the most enlightening thing for me is just finding that there is a sense of community, finding that there is a place where something like this can exist, and really just having those aha moments where you connect with somebody on a really deep level that you realize otherwise this person probably is not going to go into a church. They're probably not going to seek out help otherwise, and sometimes, and this is the same with regular in-person parish ministry too. Sometimes it's just being in those spaces where people are and showing up so that when something is going on and they need somebody, that you're the person in that space, whether that's on the golf course, whether that's in the bar, whether that's in a town hall meeting, whether that's, we talk about how like baptisms and funerals and weddings are one of the biggest places you can invite people into the church. At a funeral, you've got however many people, 100, 150, 200 people showing up to this funeral that may never come to your church. And suddenly they realize they know a pastor. And so when they're going through something and they say, I don't know what's going on, but I need somebody to talk through what's going on, they can reach out and they can ask for help. And I think the same thing is true with online gaming. And whether it's a multiplayer experience or a single player experience, but you're connecting over the fact that we are gamers, that having a connection with people in that space allows them to reach out and say, hey man, I got some stuff going on and I just want to talk about it. So half the time it might be just kind of friendly conversation and hanging out, which is probably true with Methodist men or Methodist women or, whatever other church group people are part of. But then sometimes you actually get to the nitty gritty and or the theological discussion. Somebody's like, hey, I've got this question about the Trinity. You're like, whoa, okay. Let's go there,
No, absolutely. And so much of what we do just as people outside of being pastors or anything, it's just being present, right? And so much ministry or just relationships or whatever it is built around just simply being present, like you say. And those things don't happen overnight. They take time. And when you approach the gaming community in this way, it is very much a community. Whether you're playing the same games or not, you come together over shared interest. And over time, you build that trust, right? And once you build that trust, those questions come, whether it's the statement of, oh man, I had a rough day, can you just listen? Or I've got this, tell me about the Trinity, right. Those really, really tough conversations, or whatever's going on in the world. Matt and I, with the group of guys we play with, we'll get questions every now and then, something crazy happens in the world and they're like, what do you guys think about this? Where are you at on this? And it leads to really open and honest conversations where sometimes we don't always agree. And other times it's oh, okay, I get that, and you can't do that without trust. And so it takes that intentional way to build community around something. And in this case, gaming, coming together over something we all have in common and love to do. And something very, very fruitful comes out of that in the relationships, which is awesome.
So David, if you had to play one game for the rest of your life, what video game would you play for the rest of your one game you'd play for the rest of your life?
Oh man, that's deep. And so I really find myself drawn to story-driven games. So I've been playing, like, I got into the Division 2 when it came out, and it's it's fun and it's good gameplay, but it's really repetitive and it's kind of like just over the top. Everything that moves you shoot, and so I kind of push back against that. I really liked Red Dead Redemption. It's also bloody and all that kind of stuff, but the world in Red Dead Redemption is just gorgeous. So it's kind of like walking out my backyard and just walking in the wilderness, but doing that in the digital space. So I really like that, but it's a story-driven game that has a definitive ending, and I'm not going to spoil it here, but there was definitely a point in that game where I was like, I can't play this anymore. Like, I just have to put this down. So if I had to play one game for the rest of my life, probably Minecraft. I would probably say Minecraft, because it is, you build it as you go. The exploration is there. You can explore whatever you want. And unlike a normal game where you have kind of objectives that pop up, like, oh, you have to make your way to Boston. You're like, okay, I've got to take my character and get to Boston. Minecraft, it's like, okay, well, what do I want to do? I want to build a house. Well, what do I want to build it out of? I want to build it out of wood. Well, how do I get wood? I have to go punch a tree, and then I don't have enough wood, and so I need an axe. And how do I get an axe? So you just kind of, all these things naturally build on themselves. And that's another interesting thing that Jane McGonigal talks about in her book, was the concept of work in video games, right? That the video games are not necessarily just an escape from work, but they're choosing to do more meaningful work, because sometimes, luckily we get to do wonderful work in all of our jobs that we always love. But there are definitely people out there who are doing work that they hate, right? And they're working this job that they hate, and they're thinking, look, I go to work every day and I put nut A on bolt B, and that's what I do, and I just really hate it, and I dislike the people I work with, and I'm just not happy here. Well, then they go home and they play a video game and they do the work of building a wooden house in Minecraft, and it feels much more meaningful to them. And so you kind of replace one work with another and do more meaningful work. I know this is a long, rambling explanation, but
no, that's fine.
But all that to say, I do enjoy Minecraft, the world building, the world exploration. Love open world games.
I think it's funny that you bring Minecraft up, because the whole time we've been talking, I've been sitting and thinking, in Minecraft, there's church, right? People have built churches. They hold services. I've read where they're doing communion, doing these things, right? In this world that they've created themselves, with peer groups, with communities, and they're gathering together. And like you said, we as people, we have the tendency to do things we don't like, because we need to support our families. We need to do these things. We have these jobs that, we get into and feel like there's no escape. And so we come home and we do something meaningful. We surround ourselves with a group of people and do meaningful work, whether that's our families, whether that's in video games, or a combination of both, or, it's an escape to something that means something to us. If you dig in deep into the bowels of the internet, Second Life was that for a lot of people. Of, I'm not enjoying what's here physically, so I'm gonna disappear into this world and be there and create the person that I want to be in this place. And it offered a place for people to go and be away, to be in something that was meaningful for them, where they weren't getting that fulfillment in life. And gaming has the power to do that. And going back to the mental health and the self-care piece of it, finding ways to break down the stigmas of gaming, that, oh, it's a kid's thing, and if you're still an adult playing games or doing these things, you're immature, you're just wasting time. And no, really, there's a self-care, a mental health thing for this. There was a long time that I went into our decom meetings and things like that, and they ask you about self-care. They ask you, what are you doing to take care of yourself? And I would sheepishly say, I play Xbox. Because it was what I wanted them to see me as an adult, right? And after a couple of those, I went, you know what? No, I play video games because this is a moment of I can get frustration out. I've got this community there that people listen to me and let me talk through my stuff that I can't talk to anybody else about. And no, it's a place that my mental health and my self-care are very wrapped up into. And if I did something other than this that I wasn't being fulfilled in, in my day-to-day work life, it would be that much more important. And so, yeah, for me, it's all about breaking down those barriers of, this is just a kid's thing that, no, this is really, really important. And we should allow people that space to go and play video games, whether it's Minecraft or Tetris or, whatever it is, right? Just to have that getaway to go and be in that space.
Well, I think it's...
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think it's really important to problematize that for people because, the reality is we can waste time, quote, waste time in all sorts of non-productive ways. I could re-landscape my entire backyard, which is neat, or I could re-landscape a digital world in Minecraft.
Mm-hmm.
I can play a video game online, or I can go out to the golf course. And, granted, there's a little bit of physical exercise involved in going to the golf course.
Right.
Although most of the time we're taking a cart, if we're honest. And,
right.
And not a hand cart, but a driving cart.
Yep.
And that'll take 3 to 6 hours of my day to go do that. So why is it that one is acceptable and not the other? And that's what I keep kind of problematizing and asking people those questions is like, why is it okay that we waste time and money in this way, but not in this other way? Why is it okay that you're spending $1,000 on some wall art, but if I wanted to spend $50 on a video game that's going to bring me 100 hours of enjoyment,
right?
You see that as somehow less than, and especially, even versus like you could spend $50 and go see one movie with your family.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at your value, in some ways, gaming is also a way to stretch your dollar and get more value out of it because generally I think your value for dollar, entertainment per dollar is better in video games than it is in movies or, TV,
Absolutely.
all that kind of stuff.
Well, and you bring up the family aspect of it. My son's gotten old enough; he's 9 now, and so he's getting old enough to start playing some more complex games and things like that. And often, Dad, can we play Xbox together? Yeah, sure. Of course we can. And so it's starting to be that in our house that it's not just a me thing, that it's me getting to sit down and spend some time with my kid, and play some video games, something that we both really like and connect over, which is cool. Like you say, that's $50 well spent, or whatever the Xbox cost plus,
So
time with my boy.
Question. What game, if you had to play one game your whole life, what would it be? And you can't say NHL 19.
No, I think I would go back into Xbox 360 land, and I played hours and hours and hours of Left 4 Dead 2. It was a fun game, but it was the community aspect of it. You could get together with 3 other people, run through the survival story, play online, which was a ton of fun for me. And kind of story driven. It had a pretty decent story to it, but it had a definitive beginning and end. But for me, the replayability was just night and day, or just all the time. And if they would bring that back on Xbox One and make it, make another one, I'd play it. I'd play it all day. Ton of fun.
So I'm over the sports gamer, always kind of have been. I've always been attracted to the sports games, and I would probably play Tecmo Super Bowl because that game is just legit. You get Bo Jackson out on that wing and just let him fly. And I mean, that's still what I like to play now. I really like playing the sports games. Just for what I like creating. The thing I love about the sports games is when you can create your own team and you create your super god team that nobody can beat, and you can do amazing things with them that you can't do with a normal team. I mean, that's just kind of what I like to do when I play those games. Or, just kind of like all of us, you'd mentioned Red Dead Redemption. That game was just phenomenal. And you could get lost in it really easily. And I was kind of like, he was like, man, I need to put this down, but I want to finish this game. It just had such a long story about it. as we think about this, this is, David brought up a good point. What are you investing your time in for your self-care, but also what are you investing yourself into a sense of community and connecting into a community that can be healthy, but recognizing those times when maybe the community can't be healthy. And there are times when, if that's what you're centering your life around, something that should be healthy, where it's taking up maybe eating into your work or eating into your family life or anything else, that should be a red flag, and being open and honest about that, maybe stepping away for a while. Those are those indicators with anything. And I don't think it's just video games, even though video games seem to get the worst rap on that, being open and available to seeing that there definitely is more out there.
Right. Well, that's something that was kind of in the multifaceted thing I was looking at when I first approached this topic, was like, how do we help people come up with a less stigmatized understanding of video games? And at the same time, how do we help people who are really struggling to find that, how do I balance this, and what is an appropriate time? And, because I certainly saw a good friend of mine, like he and his wife were really struggling because, his buddies would be like, hey man, we're on Xbox right now, let's jump on. And he's like, hey hon, I got to go play Xbox, see ya. And then he would just go veg out on the couch for like 3 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And so, how do you balance that? And in some of my own exploration, what I found was, some of the difference was the having not screen time, but having game time scheduled,
Mm-hmm.
or an understood block of time, rather than this kind of like sudden, I'm going to go jump away and be with my friends, which would be the same thing if your buddies just showed up one day at the door and you're in the middle of cooking dinner and you're like, hey hon, I got to go play basketball with my buddies, see ya, and just, suddenly drop the family commitment.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing that's even harder with games is often you're physically in the same room, so you're physically available, but you're emotionally unavailable.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you make sure that we have better balance around that? So I actually was a part of an Overwatch league for a while, playing with some friends. We had like 48 people playing in 6 different teams of 8, with two alternates on the team. But it was nice because I was like, look, Mondays at 9, I'm playing Overwatch, so like kids are in bed, we're all good, we have an understanding of time. Like if they wake up, you're on because I'm playing. So it was really healthy. But then I think you're right, having those conversations where you say, look, this is unhealthy. And I even had that conversation with my son. He had a friend who was like, man, I love Fortnite, I'm so addicted to it. And he's like, Dad, what does addicted mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, let's talk about what addiction means, and what it means to have something interfere with your work or your family or your ability to do those things, and how do you find a good balance? Is one of the things somebody brought up earlier about playing games of Zach, right? You were talking about playing games with your son.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting. I was trying to find the study, but I think it came out of a British study of over 1,000 households, that kind of looked again at the question of how much screen time is okay, right? Because for the longest time, we've kind of held this narrative of like screen time is bad. All screen time is bad. Well, the question that they raised and actually kind of answered, and I would agree with, is all screen time made equal? And the reality of what they found was that, a little bit of screen time when used as a babysitter
Mm-hmm.
is far more harmful to a child's mental health and a child's development than a lot of screen time when used as family time.
Right.
So you can, if you're getting together for 4 hours a night and playing Wii bowling, or Overcooked, or some sort of family party game, over communal family time, or even if you just say, hey everybody, it's game time, you're going to be on this, I'm going to be on this, you're going to be on this, but we're all going to be in the same room, we're connecting over the fact that we're all playing games, we're not ignoring each other, that they found that was much more healthy screen time for children's development than saying, oh, you know what, I've got something else I'm doing right now, just go watch 4 hours of Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because that essentially is like telling your children, hey, by the way, you don't matter right now.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we use screen time, use gaming time to build community, to build better family relationships, to recognize it's self-care for individuals and for groups, but not use it as a distraction so much that it becomes a problem. And then how do we have honest conversations with one another about like, hey man, I noticed that I actually had a conversation with my friend. I was like, hey man, I noticed that it says you have been on, I think it was Steam, for like 128 hours this week.
Oh,
And I don't even know if that's how many hours are in a week, but it was something like over 100 hours in the week. And I was like,
right,
I'm just a little concerned. And he was like, no, I just leave it running in the background, but thanks for checking in.
right.
But, it's one of those things, like you check in and say, hey,
Yeah,
are you doing okay? Because I noticed that that you've leveled up 20 times in the last week. And,
right. Is there something going on?
is everything all right with your family? And
Right, exactly. Well, and that's what community does for us, right? You see those red flags of, man, this guy's on a lot right now, or they've not been on in 10 days. What's up?
yeah,
And they're on in that healthy balance of, like in my house, I put the kids to bed, or the whole family to bed, 8:30, 9 o'clock. In the summer, in the school year, it's earlier, and then that's my time, to go and just wind down and play games. And we notice when people are on, when they have said they're not out of town, they're in town, they're whatever, and they're not on for 3 or 4 days, and they're on every day, at the same time you are. It's like we send out a text, hey, you all right? You still alive? You with us?
Still alive? Are you with us?
right.
Or when he comes back, he's alive.
Right. Yeah, it's that huge checkup thing of we're paying attention to one another, we're doing these things. And then your point about screen time, I love that. I think there's something way more healthy than if you spend an hour on Candy Crush just playing on your phone and you zone out, or if you're playing an hour of a storytelling game where you're solving problems and doing these. There's a different part of your brain that's at work there, where it's active and going with a video game that's a storytelling and you're doing something, rather than just completely zoning out and being a zombie staring at Candy Crush or any of those other games we just waste time on. Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, and games like Candy Crush too, I know have come under a lot of scrutiny, and Fortnite, but not so much Fortnite. But especially with like the concept of loot boxes or pay to win stuff.
Right.
And so that's been another area I've had conversations, and it's been a great conversation opener with my son about like, look, you can totally play Fortnite with a couple of your friends, or like, as long as I know who they are, it's got to be friends in real life. And for the most part, he will play Fortnite in solo mode, or not with random groups of people.
Right.
And that's one of those places I would say parental control is always best when the parent is in control, not to just set some remote parental control thing and let it run. But then also to have a conversation about like, okay, let's talk about this neat skin that looks like a banana and you want to buy it. And it's only 1,600, Fortnite bucks or whatever it's called, the V-Bucks, right? And so let's talk about what 1,600 V-Bucks looks like. That's actually 15 or 16 real dollars.
Right.
So, is that where you want to spend your money? Probably not. I'm not going to let you spend your money there, but, but some of that kind of stuff, or then those pay to win games where it's like, oh, well, if I just buy this extra thing, then it gives me a leg up and I can actually get out there and win. And so how do we have healthy conversations around that? And then the loot boxes, which is, essentially like gambling for some of the games, where you can get things that you can sell in a marketplace, real value, real dollars, just by playing this game. It's essentially no different than like a slot machine. Right. So, but then how do we say, okay, this is appropriate, this is not? Again, I advocate for parents to be in control. Right. But it's great because it's a conversation starter in so many different places.
Absolutely. And I think the more, especially with kids, the more that parents are aware, it's like when everybody got smartphones, 10, 15 years ago, however long it's been, when I was in youth ministry and my students started having better phones than me, it was the conversation with parents of understanding what you're giving your child. You're giving them a tiny computer they can put in their pocket and access everything. And if you're not paying attention, they will access everything.
Right.
And same as with video games. Know what your kids are doing, know where they are, know who they're talking to. And if it's somebody they don't know, they probably don't need to be talking to them. Because it's like anything else on the internet, you just don't know. And you got to be careful.
Yeah, there was a very interesting...
one of the worst places to live. It can be.
It was a very interesting. Normally I don't subscribe to Lifeway magazines, but I found I think it was March 2018. Lifeway Parenting Teens magazine had an entire month that was devoted to how do we parent teens. And one of the things they advocated was like, as parents, we got to be involved, and we got to be more involved than just knowing what our kids are doing. But like, if you're a parent and your kid's playing Fortnite, try playing Fortnite.
Right.
You will actually connect so much better with your kid. And yeah, you're not going to be great at it. Yeah, you're probably going to like die within the first 10 seconds, but your kid's going to love connecting with you in that way. The same way that a kid playing baseball is going to connect better by going out in the backyard and having catch and, playing catch with a parent versus, just, all right, well, it's time for baseball. Get on your bike and ride to practice. So, we got to be involved.
Yeah. Love it.
I think that's a good place to end. And thinking about how we're being involved, not only with our children, but like with our friends and how we're connecting and like what our time is being set aside for. I think that's vital. And for those of you that are gamers, that are pastors, it's okay. Don't let your old people shame you into it's a bad thing. Because I can't tell you the number of conversations I've had when I hear them complaining about video games. I'm like, you do realize I play video games. That's
right.
my thing. And I've yet to not do any of the things that you're saying that we do. And so I think that's a good place to be honest and bring that to a conversational table is how it can be healthy and what can be unhealthy. But I think it's more than just video games. It's those outside habits as well. And being,
right.
Being attentive to those. And I think that's a good place to have conversation. And so we invite you to have conversation on our Facebook page at Bearded Theologians, or on Instagram or anywhere else we do the things. And so you can go to beardedtheologians.com where we've got all sorts of great stuff and swag and all sorts of items for you to look at or maybe even purchase. It's not as cool as a loot box. It won't help you level up in the world.
I don't know, it might.
As much as we think it does in our own little heads. But, go on the beardedtheologians.com and check everything out. And so, David, thanks for your time. And so,
thank you guys so much for having me on. And if I could shamelessly plug anybody that's interested in gaming, come on over to Crossfire Faith and Gaming on Facebook. Check it out. Help us build the community and help have a conversation with us.
Cool. Perfect.
Thank you guys for having me on.
Yeah, thanks, David.
So for the Bearded Theologians, I'm Matt Franks.
I'm Zach Bechtold. Thanks for checking us out.
We hope you've enjoyed the conversations that we've had today on the Bearded Theologians Beardcast, and we'd encourage you to continue those conversations online at beardedtheologians.com or on our Facebook page. We also hope that you pick up a couple of coffee mugs to satisfy your coffee mug collection. Have a good day.